Brothers and sisters, May 15th is going to be a wonderful day. Why? One of my favorite heroes, Blessed Charles de Foucault, is going to be canonized as saint. And I bring him up because he's a powerful witness to Eucharistic adoration. You know, if some people say that, oh gosh, that person spent too much time in adoration, that person is, you know, like they're a bit obsessive about adoration. You know, I get comments like this by people who don't understand the presence of the Lord. They don't understand that God is worthy of all our praise. He's worthy of all our time. And I suppose that's what hermits and contemplatives witness to the rest of the church. We can't all be like that, of course, but it's still that deep truth. We all of us have to make God completely the goal of all our lives, no matter what we do. We won't always have the calling of sitting in silence for hours and hours and hours every day, as some souls are called to prop up the church with prayer. But we're called to search for God and to bring God into every single detail of our life. God is so demanding of our time. Why? Because that's when we flourish. That's when we're happy. Our hearts grow dull and boring and mundane when we throw out the hierarchy. What I mean by hierarchy, the order. When God's not first, when we're not doing things for God, and when we're doing things just for the things of the enjoyment of the world for itself, we become dull. We become mundane. And we can enter a false desert, which I call the desert of lukewarmness, not the other kind of dryness that will come when God is purifying our prayer. But the point is, this Saint Charles de Foucault is driven so much by his love for the Eucharistic Lord. He knows this is Jesus. There's no other truth coming into his mind other than the fact that this is Christ. And what if this is Jesus amounts as, what else am I going to do than to find myself at his feet often? And so he often takes the model of St. Mary Magdalene and St. John at the foot of the cross and Mary as his examples to persevere at the foot of Christ, especially Mary Magdalene. She's the one we see in the Gospels is always at the feet of Christ, humbly adoring. You know, Christ just accepts her loving, humble adoration, her affection, her just to be there, the willingness to look like a fool in front of others. And this is part of the mystery of adoration, to be a fool. Adorers, people who are called to adore a lot, will be misunderstood by family, misunderstood by friends, misunderstood by priests, misunderstood by religious, misunderstood. And that's because Christ, there's a whole mystery of when you're getting identified with Christ, of being misunderstood. And especially around this idea of worship and adoration. We cannot pray and worship enough. St. Teresa of Avila warns her nuns of saying that if anybody comes to you and tells you you're praying too much, they're a false prophet. She's very strong on that. Now we need to balance that with what she would also understand is that, you know, duties and states of life. Like the nuns couldn't be in the chapel when they were supposed to be preparing the meal for the sisters. There's a right place and a right time for everything, absolutely. But in our free time, the time that we can give to God, we cannot pray enough. And prayer, really, the experience with prayer is really at first, you know, the things of this world grab so much of our attention that prayer could be very distracting, could be a distaste. But it's like a rocket. That rocket eventually breaks forth of the gravitational force, and then it starts free-flowing in space, you know. And it's the same thing with us. We have to break beyond those initial temptations pulling us, our flesh, the world pulling us down away from the heights of prayer, and break. Once we resist that, then, you know, the devil all gives up on temptation, and then grace has come to really help our weak body and our weak nature to really ascend to God in prayer. So perseverance is the key. And Charles de Foucault, Blessed Charles de Foucault, is a wonderful example of perseverance in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament. There were times where he felt nothing, where he says in his writings that he was dry, but he stayed there making a deep act of faith. And it was his faith, relying on his faith, that allowed him to even derive some consolation while even being dry, while feeling no fervor. But it was his faith knowing, this is Jesus. And then there were times of exaltation and ecstasy and you know, the light, the bright light. You know, I want to read something from one of his writings in his early days when he was a hermit in Nazareth attached to this Port Clare monastery of nuns. Get a sense of his soul. Get a sense of him alone with Christ in the night, and hearing I'm going to read, you'll hear. It says, "My God, now the silent hour has returned. It's 8 p.m. The night wraps the earth and the sky is black with clouds, no sound to be heard but a distant singing. How sad is the sound of this song that comes, borne by the wind, from some worldly haunt of men. What a false note it sounds. It is that cry from the heart of man that tries to be joyous, but in spite of itself, because it is not sanctified by you, my Savior is very plaintive." He's speaking about people probably in a pub, down the road, that seemingly reveling in joy. It is true that the expression of human pleasures, the more one tries to find joy in them, the more they seem filled with tears. Oh, how blessed are we, my Savior, to be so far from this sad, dull world, whose echoes reach us faintly on the wind. How good to draw close to you in this little room with your mother,